Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about trauma-informed body piercing. Now these days more than ever I see piercers listing themselves online as trauma-informed or talking about offering trauma-informed services. And I've talked a little bit before about that on my channel, but what does it really mean to be a trauma-informed body piercer? And when we list ourselves as offering these services, what are we telling clients to expect from us, and how are we meeting those expectations? Trauma-informed care is defined as a framework for relating to and helping people who have experienced negative consequences after exposure to dangerous experiences. Trauma-informed care principles emphasize the need to understand the scope of what constitutes danger and how the resulting trauma impacts human health, thoughts, relationships, behavior, emotions, and communication. People who have been exposed to life-altering danger need safety, choice, and support in their interpersonal relationships, and that includes experiences like tattoo and body piercing. Trauma-informed care frameworks can be applied in a variety of different fields, including medicine, mental health, law, education, addiction, gender, and culture. And yes, of course, tattoo and body piercing. In fact, there's a statistical correlation between survivors of trauma and violence and opting to find healing and reclamation through tattoo and body piercing. We've talked about that at length before on my channel, and it's even been studied by amazing researchers like Jen Brockman, who instructs the Trauma-Informed Piercing course at conference every year. Trauma-informed framework is incredibly important in a wide variety of ways, but when we as an industry understand that trauma survivors are going to seek us out and seek out the services that we offer in order to help them reclaim their bodies and heal from their trauma, we have a responsibility to these survivors to offer the safest and most informed services possible. And like I mentioned, there is a class on trauma-informed body piercing that you can take typically every year at the Association of Professional Piercers conference in Vegas, and that is an amazing starting point to doing trauma-informed care. But taking one single class is not enough to truly say that you are operating from a trauma-informed framework, and trauma survivors deserve us doing a lot more work to ensure that we are creating a safe space for them to exist in. For someone to really list themselves as a trauma-informed body piercer, I would say that a class like that is just the starting point of trauma-informed services. We as providers should be really researching the full body effects of trauma and what going through these experiences can do to someone's mind, to someone's body, to someone's emotions, and to someone's relationships. Especially because piercing and tattooing can bring up some incredibly traumatic memories and experiences for clients in the moment of getting that piercing or tattoo, and we should be prepared and equipped to talk through that with them, work through that with them, and provide them a safe space to process these emotions as they come up. The last thing we want to do is re-traumatize someone by not being adequately prepared to hold space for what may come up when we are directly working through their trauma. Unfortunately, these are experiences that I've had happen. I've gone to tattoo artists who talk online about being trauma-informed, and during my session getting tattooed, it's brought up a lot of big and difficult emotions for me. I become emotional and started crying, and I had an artist who literally didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say, didn't know how to offer me any support or guidance, and basically made me feel guilty for getting emotional during my session, and kind of was essentially like, I need you to hurry up, we need to finish this tattoo, I have appointments after you, which as a service provider, I understand having a busy booked day, but if you're going to advertise yourself as offering trauma-informed work and you are going to potentially talk about trauma with your clients, probe or ask them about their trauma, and then when they have an emotional response, shut them down and say you don't have time for them, that's really re-traumatizing. So as a baseline, if you want to be a trauma-informed body piercer or tattoo artist, you need to have a solid education about trauma. And the good news is there is a wealth of books and media and research out there to help you get this baseline. In fact, I've added an entire section to the media recommendations list on my blog post that goes over books that I think are relevant for someone who is looking to become trauma-informed to read and work through. And if you want to learn even more, the next video on my channel is actually going to be a review of one of these books, trauma and recovery. But I would start by doing a lot of self-motivated learning about trauma and how the body holds and stores trauma, and how we as tattoo artists and body piercers might unlock some of that trauma through what we do, and how we can best support someone in the moment if that happens. Taking the trauma-informed class at conference is of course a great one, and this is probably going to be the most directly applicable because you're going to go over things like what language to use in the studio to be inclusive, how to emotionally hold space for a client who's having a traumatic response. We'll talk about statistics when it comes to trauma survivors and body modifications. If you aren't able to make it to conference, I know that Jen sometimes teaches this class independently to studios, and it's incredible. You should absolutely, if you're serious about becoming trauma-informed, do everything in your power to be able to take this class, as to my knowledge, it's the only one directly relevant to the industry, and it's so worth it. Beyond that, you can do further education and further work with local charities and local networks. There's typically training courses that you can take for victims advocates or folks who want to volunteer with trauma survivors, domestic violence survivors, and you can reach out to some of those programs in your area and say, hey, I'm not necessarily like working as a trauma advocate or a DV advocate, but I work in tattoo and body piercing. I work with a lot of survivors and victims of trauma. I'd like to be more trauma informed and able to better work with them. Is this something where I could come and sit in on these classes? Can I attend these classes? Do you have any resources for someone like me to be able to learn more and offer better services? I've had a lot of success working with local women's shelters and local charities that focus on domestic violence and abuse, who have allowed me to come in and attend some of their workshops and their meetings to allow me to gain more information on how to better hold space and work with clients like this. There's also a lot of free webinars in the therapy space about dealing with trauma-informed work and things of that nature that, again, if you just type up a little explanation of why you're looking to attend and the services that you offer, most folks will typically be comfortable with you doing that. But it is so important that if we are advertising ourselves as trauma-informed and inviting people to come in and have these intimate and vulnerable experiences in our spaces, that we are making sure we have education and training to be able to handle these experiences and not re-traumatize someone. It also means we have to be doing a lot of our own healing and processing. Someone else may come in to get a piercing or a tattoo from you, and it may bring stuff up for them. They may have a large emotional response, and depending on your own trauma, and let's be honest, everyone who works in this industry has trauma, that could be triggering for you. So if you aren't in a good place in your personal healing and your personal journey, you may not be able to show up for your client in the way that they need or in the way that you would like to, because there's still so much of your own processing to do. So part of doing trauma-informed work is also working on healing your own trauma, coming to terms with your own experiences, your own triggers, your own emotional responses, and healing for yourself so that you can show up to help others heal. Once you have a better understanding of how trauma works, how it affects the body, how it affects communications and people's responses and interactions, you can go into these client interactions with a lot more intentionality. I am very selective about the type of language I use in my piercing room to minimize re-traumatizing clients who've been through something traumatic. I'm very conscientious of consent and touch, personal space and bodily autonomy, and I am very careful with how I interact with my clients surrounding like getting consent before touches and making sure they're comfortable with the type of touch, doing what I can to ensure that clients feel comfortable and safe advocating for themselves in my piercing room, that they know that they can speak up and talk to me about these things. And a big thing is just making the time to hold emotional space. If a client has a big response to a piercing or something really big comes up, I am not going to rush that client out of my room. I'm going to sit with them. We are going to talk through it. If they want a hand to hold or someone to hug or someone to cry with, I'm going to be there. If they want physical space and to be given some time, I'm going to make sure that they have that too. But I'm never going to set like a firm time limit on how long they have to feel these experiences in my piercing room. I'm not going to tell anyone that they have to hurry it up with their responses. And I'm also not going to push someone if they're uncomfortable or if they decide they want to back out or change their minds on a piercing, or if it's just too difficult or brings up too much for them that day. There are so many little things that we should be putting into our practice if we are truly looking to do trauma-informed work. And from the language we use to how we carry ourselves to physically how we position ourselves in the piercing room to the way we talk to clients, all of these things make a really big difference in creating a truly trauma-informed experience for our clients. And all of that starts with a strong foundation of knowledge and education about trauma, trauma treatment, and how to support a trauma survivor. So it is not enough to just take one class at conference or read one book. This should be a continuing education where you are consistently seeking out more knowledge about trauma, more spaces where you can learn about this, working with different groups. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of different modalities of trauma-informed care, and I feel like there's a little something from each one that we can learn about and learn how to apply in our piercing room. So for anyone watching who is interested in doing more trauma-informed work or who wants to be able to better hold space for clients to have these experiences in your piercing room, I really strongly suggest that you check out all of the books that I am adding to my media list. There are a lot of really good ones that are going to help you understand how to be present and how to show up for these clients, and honestly probably also going to totally call you out about your own trauma and experiences. I know that was my experience reading a lot of these. I just kept reading and going, ooh, that's a little too close to home. But they're very, very good. It's a very important knowledge base for us to have. And I think we as an industry as a whole are saying a lot of nice fancy words about piercing being a safe space and about bodily reclamation and about all of these things, but without actually doing the labor and the work and the effort that it takes to truly create that safe space and truly create these experiences. So I hope talking a little bit more about that helps, and I hope this inspires a lot more folks to do more reading, more research, and come from a more educated, understood, and proven background as far as how they approach trauma-informed body piercing. All right, folks, thanks so much for hanging out and chatting, and I can't wait to sit down and talk with you again soon. Bye.